Hello, awesome. Cool, so we'll just quick introductions to myself. That's me on the left, Teri Baines, product manager here at Chattermill. So just kind of looking after the overall app and trying to make it as great for our customers and prospects as possible.
Hi there, I'm Tom Whitney. I work in the solutions team at Chattermill, so working with our customers and potential customers to establish how they can use what we do and how it can provide value.
So the topic for today is all around two-sided marketplaces. And these are actually much more prevalent than I think we give them recognition for. So when you think about when you're booking your holiday, you're looking at Skyscanner, you're looking at Expedia, you're looking at Airbnb. There are many more, I can't name them all. Same for when you're kind of ordering food in, you're looking at Deliveroo, Uber Eats. And then when we are brave enough to go outdoors, we often get a taxi, and we're looking at Uber, Free Now, and Lyft. And each time that you interact with these brands and with these companies, you're also interacting with the seller on the other side, even though you don't think about it that way. As far as you're concerned, you're just booking an Uber. You're not booking an Uber with that particular driver. And this is a massive industry, and it's just got an amazing potential. So the OC&C actually predict that this industry of itself will actually grow 15% annually. Now, the coronavirus pandemic has clearly had an impact on this. It's changed all of our behaviors. I'm sure we can all kind of appreciate that we've gone on to buying pretty much everything online. I think I'm actually a little bit concerned about how much stuff I buy online these days, and everything that I sort out online, like holiday, it's a little bit outrageous. So there's clearly a shift in everyone's behavior towards this. And this was recognized by one of our own customers, Just Eat, and they saw a 76% growth in the first 6 months of 2021. Now, what was even more interesting about this quite phenomenal growth was that this wasn't just new customers. This was returning customers. And another stat that has very much concerned me is that on average, they worked out that their customers would have about 3 takeaways a month. My number is so much higher.
Yeah.
I don't know about yourself.
I've never quantified it, and if I had, I probably wouldn't admit it now.
We're not going to go there. So very, very clearly, massive growth opportunity, okay? So one thing that always comes with these big opportunities is, of course, the competition. So we can see that the competition is fierce right now. And, Chattermill, we're all about customer experience, as the summit kind of presents. And so what we want to do today is demonstrate the importance of just the customer experience as a whole, to make sure that you are making the most out of these opportunities. Tom, I think you're going to kind of briefly introduce the tool that we're using, which is obviously Chattermill.
Yes, absolutely. So we are using the live Chattermill platform for the session today. Some of you are probably familiar with it if you are our customers and partners. Some of you may not be, but don't worry, it'll all be fairly clear. We'll try and talk through things as we go. This is about the retailers, not necessarily about the features and functions of any technology at all. That's for another day. That QR code that someone showed you earlier about getting a demo, do that. So what we've done is we've analysed, as Teri says, over 40,000 comments, 40,000 Trustpilot reviews across 5 of the biggest online retail marketplaces. You can see them there, left to right: Etsy, Wayfair, eBay, Zalando, and Depop. Those 40,000, or 42,276, they dated from across 13 months of data, from January 22 till fairly obviously 13 months later, so the start of this year. And one final thing to say, a few people have mentioned on this stage already about unification. This is just Trustpilot, but clearly there's a potential to add so much more to this. We could add in social media data. We could add in App Store reviews. We could, potentially not for a competitive perspective, but we could add in data from, if you were representing one of those companies, your NPS data, your CSAT data, your support tickets. On this occasion, Trustpilot.
I'm very excited. So one thing to kind of consider, the brands that we're looking at here, like I said, two-sided marketplace, clues in the name, there are very clearly 2 sides to the overall experience. That is the buyer and the seller. And it comes back to, the old age phrase of supply and demand, but it's supply and demand twice. So for the buyers, something that we are constantly looking at when we are purchasing online, when we're looking at services online, is we want choice. We want to be allowed to choose. We want to, make our own decisions, and we want to have those options available to us. Ease of use, of course, where anybody who is UX focused here will know that if your product is difficult to use, it doesn't matter how much value it's bringing. We're so used to kind of this amazing user experience that we're just expectant of it now. And the other thing is trust. And I touched on this earlier. And for me, whenever I'm buying something online, especially through these marketplaces, I have to trust the brand itself to represent the seller, because I don't know who's selling me the shoes. As far as I'm concerned, it is Depop who's selling me the shoes, but I need to have trust that they will also fulfill that. And then the other side being the sellers, of course, they want the volume of customers. You don't want to go through this entire process of creating your page, creating your Etsy shop, taking 7,000 pictures of the shoes, and then there's nobody there to kind of buy them. The other thing, of course, we're looking at easy setup. We want this to be easy, again, kind of playing onto the UX, product person, so that's all I'm going to talk about. And one thing that is really important as well for the sellers is like a simplified transaction process. So these aren't, predominant retailers. They just want they want their lives to be as easy as possible. So next up, we're going to look at the buyer versus seller experience.
Yeah, indeed. So the first thing to say is we can absolutely split out those two experiences. We can start to look separately at the buyers and what they're saying, and the sellers and what they're saying. The first thing on the left-hand side there with those colourful bars is we're looking at essentially negativity index, the amount of negativity that people are saying. So the higher, the worse these brands are doing. And we can start to see that just by eye, they look quite similar. The model across the sellers and the buyers looks pretty similar. That's not particularly statistically significant, what I'm saying there, but just by eye, you can tell that there's a similar experience. But the sellers, by and large, are having a more negative experience. There's more negativity amongst the sellers than the buyers. So the first thing we did then is to look at what's causing that. Ask why. It'll come up, something I say quite a lot, always ask why. So the first thing to look at here, in the middle, the blue bars, is the top negative phrases being mentioned by those sellers. And we can see a few things there. I'm not sure how well it's legible from the back. One thing that's mentioned just there is Vinted. Vinted is not one of those 5 brands we're looking at today, but they're being mentioned a lot alongside them. So they're being compared, favourably or not, I'm not sure, but they're being mentioned a lot. So that's another player. If we were doing this research again, maybe we should include that brand. But also around that, we've got a lot of mentions of fees. Right at the top there, I won't even try and get my silhouette to reach. Charge fee, take fees, we've got make money down the bottom. That seems to be what's driving people to be negative in terms of the sellers. The sellers being negative because of the fees that these companies are charging. And if we look at the most negative company, that's Depop. A lot of mentions specifically, we've got some verbatims here around the 10% flat fee that they charge. So when selling, there's a Depop transaction fee plus a Depop selling fee, 10%, etc. I won't read them out. Some of you, if you're near enough the front, you can probably read them for yourself. This is not going down well, driving a lot of 1- and 2-star reviews.
I mean, what's quite interesting for me here is that out of the 5 kind of top mentioned phrases, 3 of them are directly around the fees that they're charging and all about money. And if you think about it, sellers, when they're coming to these platforms, they're there for profitability. It might not be their main business, it might be their side business, but ultimately you are there to make money, to somehow exchange your services or your products for that money. So the fact that this is like highest mentioned is clearly something that is on the mind of all of the sellers that are coming to these 2-sided marketplaces. So something to potentially consider for those who are in this industry.
Absolutely. And then to sort of complete the picture, we then looked at the buyers, because they're the other side of this, the 2-sided marketplace. So what are they saying? Well, again, we've got a similar situation over on the left-hand side there, where Amazon's now being mentioned. Again, not one of the 5 we're looking at here, but being mentioned alongside these. Is this price benchmarking? Is this just comparison that people are making? But it's a significant phrase being used. But the other 2, though, at the top there, poor quality and price increases. So that's what's driving negativity from the buyers. Poor quality stuff, that's not going to go down well. things that are too expensive, also not going to go down well. Fairly obvious, but we're quantifying it here. And we can see, even drilling down to very, very specifics here, the worst performer here, Wayfair, and we can even see individual comments about individual products. In this case, tables. Again, I won't read them all out. I'll just mention the top one. Bought a folding garden table. It's okay, but the quality is not great. You're getting really specific, really in-depth here. We can start to track specific products being sold by these companies and the quality impact that it's having on negativity.
It's all 3 different tables. There's the garden table, the coffee table, and the dining table, and clearly tables are not their strong point. So that's quite interesting. And we're going to do like a little switch into like more customer focused. And again, with this massive shift of behavior towards these online purchases, delivery is, as far as the user or the customer is concerned, that is part of the experience. And so that experience is attached to the brand. And Amanda said it very, very well earlier, that the incorporation of like the delivery tracking, instead of having the users have to ask that. And it's expected. I think like personally for me, my experience, if I buy something online, I don't consider my experience with that brand to be over as soon as the payment goes through. For me, it's that item has to arrive at my house. It has to be functional. I have to have tried it on. It has to be working. It can't have 3 wobbly legs. So it's the customer experience kind of remit has widened massively with the, everything kind of being delivered. So it's super, super important for retailers to know exactly where those pinch points are in that process, because as far as your customers are concerned, that has everything to do with your brand, and that has everything to do with whether or not they're going to come back.
Indeed. Let's have a look at delivery. So first thing we did is we benchmarked our 5 brands. So top left there, in the red, which retailers got the most negative sentiment? Well, you can see 2 clear winners, losers. Wayfair and Zalando there. They're getting a lot more negativity than the other 3. And then you can see the hierarchy of the other 3 as well. But again, I'll say that thing again. Why? Because just benchmarking against a competitor, that's good. It's good if you're doing better than them. It's bad if you're not. But unless you know why, you can't act on that. You can't improve. You can't try and chase them or beat them. So let's figure out what elements of delivery are driving this negativity. Delivery speed and timeliness. You want your things to arrive on time. Things that are lost in transit or no delivery. If it doesn't arrive at all, bad news. Specific couriers being mentioned. Tracking. I think Amazon mentioned it earlier today, being able to track where your parcel actually is, so you don't have to contact support to find out proactively. So that's what's been quantified here. And we can start to see which ones are driving that negativity. And then of the couriers, there's one of the things that we were looking at there. Of the couriers, we can start to see which of those are being mentioned. So Royal Mail, PostNord, UPS, these are all companies that clearly these retailers are using. They're partners of those organisations, or indeed they're companies that the sellers, because these are 2-sided marketplaces, are using themselves. So now we can start to track which of these is causing potential problems for the retailers, because not all the things that are problematic are within your control necessarily. And here we can start to see which of these couriers are being associated most with the retailers. So Every have got a strong connection with Wayfair, UPS likewise with Wayfair. Lots of chat about this. Lots of chat around UPS and Every, and probably not good to associate with these negative responses. And down the bottom, tracking that specifically for Wayfair. So we saw that they're not performing very well here, and no delivery seems to be driving it. That top left pink bars there, no delivery is one of the biggest drivers of negativity for Wayfair's deliveries. And unfortunately for them, look at the time graph down the bottom here. When does that peak? That's not a good time of year for peaking if you're a retailer, because we all know what November and December means, probably the busiest time of the year with the holidays, Christmas coming up. So that's probably not a good thing. And once again, I'll finish with drilling down into the verbatims. This is talking about cancelled orders and no delivery. So this is a scam. They cancelled my order after almost a month of waiting. I've been waiting months for my item to be delivered after they lied and claimed it was delivered in July. Not great, not good to read, but we can start to track that too.
I mean, I can completely empathize with these customers. I mean, you're putting in an order, you're waiting several months. You've probably timed it to arrive just before the holiday period when it's incredibly stressful because the in-laws are coming. And it doesn't turn up and you have to eat everything off of the garden furniture. We've all done that. And it's not fun. It's not a fun experience. So you can, as far as those customers are concerned, like the loyalty to that particular brand, regardless of whether that brand was actually responsible for the issue of delivery, that's pretty much destroyed at that point. So kind of saying, well, we use a courier to do our delivery. Customers don't see it that way. They see it as a whole kind of experience in one. And these are reviews for those brands, not for the couriers themselves. So we're so expectant of having things delivered to our home. Like I said, most of my shopping's done online from the sofa. And equally, I want to do all of my life from my sofa, to be honest. But the return process, like if something doesn't arrive, doesn't fit, one shoe's bigger than the other, I do want to be able to return it, and I want that to be kind of an easy process. And this has obviously grown massively, right, the returns, because everything's getting delivered, so everything has to be returned in the same way. And some fun facts from my team. The first week of 2021, UPS accepted 1.75 million returns a day. So that works out to be about 9 million a week. I'll be honest, the numbers are actually too big for my tiny brain to fathom. It's just astronomical. And that was an increase of 23% versus the previous holiday season. So we can see that, the whole thing is growing, and this is clearly a massive part for the customers. And of course, all of the returns, and anybody who knows this or has had to return something, this will come at a cost. And I think like the average cost of processing a return is about $10 to $20. So for a lot of retailers, they can write this off. $10 to $20, we'll just send you a refund, we'll just send you a replacement. As far as the customer's concerned, that's quite a nice experience. You might get a free item. It might be one shoe bigger than the other, but that's fine. But when it comes to larger ticket items, like tables, obviously these are going to cost a lot more than $10 to $20 to actually send them back on top of the massive effort that it does entail. And the retailers, they can't just write that off. They can't just say, oh, sorry, you didn't like the table, have it for free. They need to have it back. And so it's just like a whole nightmare for like these larger items to kind of consider. And as far as the customer is concerned, this is a massive part, again, of their experience. For them, this is still a touch point for them. This is still them interacting with your brand. So we're going to dive into returns. I really like this one.
Yeah, definitely. So the first thing to say on returns is a reminder, this is two-sided marketplaces. So a lot of these things don't really have the concept of returns in the same way that a pure play, just direct retailer would have. The two that have that concept as well, a bit more than the other two, are Zalando, and the three, are Zalando and Wayfair. They have a direct sales model as well as a two-sided marketplace, as well as a buyer-seller marketplace. So we focus just on those two primarily for the return story, because it is so important. Now, the small charts, centre mid at the top there, Wayfair has got significantly fewer mentions of returns. The volumes are much higher for Zalando. So more people are talking about returns with Zalando. But again, I want to know why. And interestingly, those mentions are much more negative for Wayfair. So the volume is lower, but it's a lot more negative. So again, why? Let's go one depth there. And we see the trends as well, bottom left there as well. So you see it seems to be getting worse to an extent. But Wayfair customers, it seems to be driven largely by the fact they've got to pay for it. Right? It's obvious when it's put in front of you. If you have to pay for something, it's probably worse than if you don't. But this is what's being mentioned in all of these amazing one-star reviews about things that they've got to pay for. They've got to pay for the return. I pay for the return on a product which is described incorrectly. No chance of me using Wayfair again. Again, it seems really obvious once it's put in front of you, but it's really powerful and driving a lot of negativity versus a competitor in Zalando.
And I mean, it kind of touches on the point of, the bigger ticket items, they're going to cost more to return. A kind of simple answer, oh, we'll just get the customers to pay for it. And don't, basically, is the moral of that story. But it is an awful experience if you think about it from a customer perspective. I personally absolutely despise having to return something. I don't know if it's the millennial in me, but I hate convoluted processes, especially if this involves multiple people. So please don't have me speak to more than one person. I just won't do it. So that, to me, that impacts like why I would go to that brand. And for me, Amazon's amazing because I just have to write in the chat box and then they just return it and it's all great. And, most of the time that you are interacting with this, you kind of process the return. You're doing this through customer support. And the fact that customer support is like only one tab of this clearly showcases that the customer experience is so much wider than just the customer support, right? But fun facts about customer support. So this is a report from Microsoft. 90% of people use customer support as a factor in their decision when deciding who to shop with or who to do business with. And then 58% of people said that they would switch supplier if they had a bad experience with customer support. And another fun fact from Salesforce, that 89% of people said that they're more likely to return to a brand if they've had a positive customer support experience. And it makes sense. If you have to interact with somebody, you want it to be a nice experience. You want them to be pleasant. You want it to kind of work. You don't want to feel like you're fighting the people that you paid money to get something that you don't even feel is actually what you bought. Like, it's just not great. So the customer support part is massive. And I know it might not be the kind of sexiest topic that we can talk about today, but if you think about your customers and the touch points that they have with your brand, if they do have to speak to customer support, that is their longest touch point. So if I buy something online, it takes me 5 seconds because I'm very good at it. But if I then have to return it, that is 20 minutes of my day, at least, that I'm chatting to a customer support, that I'm sorting something out, that I'm getting an order number, and I'm figuring it all out. So, it's actually a massive part for the customer when they interact with your customer support. And it's so crucial to make sure that they are having a positive experience. So yeah, let's dive into it. This is, again, one of the fun ones.
And while I'm bringing up the next dashboard for customer support, which we can start looking at now, also remember what I said at the beginning. While this is just Trustpilot data, imagine how much more powerful this could be if we included support data, which we absolutely could do. Perhaps not for benchmarking other companies, because you're unlikely to have your competitors' support data, of course, to hand. But including your own means you can start to analyze and learn from that as well. Our friend at Wise earlier was talking exactly about that, about reducing the number of support tickets. So let's start looking at support. The first thing, again, we did, to similar vein to one of the previous screens, is that we started to benchmark them. So top left there, we're now looking at positivity, hence why it's green rather than the previous one red, nice and simple. Which of them is doing best? Etsy. Etsy's doing really, really well with customer service compared to those other four. Wayfair, doing well in second place. Again, though, my sort of catchphrase, it seems, for today, ask why. What aspect of the customer support are they doing well or badly in? Because if you know that, you can improve. You can start to benchmark, but also know how to improve on that. So we can start to see the knowledge and helpfulness of the agents is important. The speed and responsiveness of them is important. The communication is important. The attitude of the staff. These are aspects that people care about and talk about. And we can actually see that the two at the bottom, I'm going to look at take a bit of a negative bent on this. Depop and eBay are rated the lowest. And it seems to be largely driven by speed and responsiveness over here and communication right over on that side.
My favorite part about this graph, is obviously we have favorite bits of the graph, we're data people, is the problem resolution. So this is positivity index. So this is where people are like, oh, we really love customer support because of X, Y, Z. And number 5 is problem resolution. So they're ranking this as 5th, basically, as what is actually making them enjoy the overall customer support experience. And the fact that just knowledge, helpfulness, I don't think there's anyone here who doesn't like it when somebody's helpful and nice to them. And speed and responsiveness, there's nothing worse than opening up the chat box, and then you kind of start your message, and then you obviously move on to another tab, and then you miss them, and then they send you a survey. So I find it quite interesting that problem resolution is actually weighted lower than the others, but then don't find it surprising.
Yeah, I think it's about expectations. Customers just expect their problem to be solved.
Yeah, that's true.
If it's solved politely and knowledgeably and quickly, then they'll mention it and they'll talk about it on Trustpilot. I think that's probably explains some of it, possibly.
Yeah.
Looking down a little bit further, so let's look into the speed and responsiveness part of this, and looking at those two sort of worst performers, if you will. Speed and responsiveness seems to have changed over time. So that top left chart now, we're now looking at the amount of negativity around speed and responsiveness across these two, eBay and Depop. And versus the earlier time period, one of them's got better. eBay has improved. They've got their act together. They've improved something about that. Whereas Depop, not so much. They've got sort of marginally a little bit worse, actually. We see that in the line chart to the right there as well. So you can see historically, over time, eBay seems to be performing slightly worse than Depop on the negative aspects of speed and responsiveness. But then something happened, again, around that sort of holiday period potentially, where they got their act together and they improved, and they're now beneath them, as in doing better. What is that? What's driving it? How could Depop learn from eBay? Because that's what benchmarking is all about. How can we improve? How can we learn from our competitors, learn from the market around us? Well, it seems to be trying to contact is a big one. People can't even contact support. If they can't get hold of them, they feel like they're not being listened to, they feel that they're never going to get that ticket resolved, they're never going to get their problem resolved, and it's frustration. How many of these one-star reviews, I tried to message back buyers, it goes blank. If you've ever tried to contact them about anything, you may never hear back. How many of these have been written while frustratedly on hold, can't even get hold of anyone?
And it speaks to the whole, I tried to message back the buyers. So this person has now decided to go around the brand and just speak directly with the person who sold them whatever they were selling them, Depop, shoes. But they're just trying to resolve it. And it seems they've just circumvented the brand entirely. And on top of that, they're still getting a negative experience. So, I think we can all imagine the frustration of trying to resolve something that you don't feel you should deserve anyway because you've paid for that service. And then they just make it difficult. So, yeah, I can very much empathize with the people who are kind of leaving these one-star reviews. I might be one of them.
Indeed. Let's have a final look at a few stats then, just sort of in conclusion on screen before we get into any questions, I guess. So just a reminder, we analysed over 40,000 Trustpilot reviews, those 42,000 and something. The average score per company here, you can start to rank them. So that's pretty easy stuff, right? That's just quantitative things. Etsy's doing the best, Wayfair's doing the second best, eBay, Zalando, Depop. So we can start to say, who's actually performing the best? But then again, my catchphrase once more, why? Why are people liking Etsy? Well, they like their customer care, attitude of staff. The staff at Etsy are doing a great job. The buyer experience, in terms of the product quality and satisfaction. Etsy do good products and they're getting thumbs up. And then finally, knowledge and helpfulness on their customer care. So customer care are doing really well with Etsy. Etsy needs to sort of double down on that. Their competitors maybe need to improve to catch up. What is doing not so well on the sort of loser in all this, Depop? Well, the selling process is seen as a real negative. It's really hard for sellers to actually work through Depop and with Depop. Customer care communication. Again, customer care raises its head again. On this occasion, on a negative basis, they're not good at communicating with their buyers and sellers. And then finally, one we haven't really touched upon much today, is their app and website quality. Something's going wrong with their website that is being seen as not easy to use, not easy to interact with. So this is what these companies can learn, not just benchmarking, are you doing better or worse? That only gives you the top level. If you understand why, you understand what's in those sort of verbatims, what's in those unstructured text-based bits of feedback, you can learn and try and improve.
Very much so. Cool. I think that's definitely it from us, but we're going to move on to question time. So yeah. Oh. Does anybody have any questions?
This one there, I think.
So I know you can download a lot of that data into a single CSV file, but I was wondering if there's a way to collate all of those forms of data into one report, if it's something that you're looking into.
Take it?
Yeah. Yes. This is the easy answer. But essentially, it would be interesting to understand like what you would want to gain out of that report, right? Like we can slice and look at the data from all different lenses, and we can analyze various things. Like we do sentiment analysis, there's scores, there's volumes, like all of the metrics that you can think of. So yeah, it would very much depend on like what question you're trying to answer. And then yes, you would be able to build a report and actually look at the data that would help you answer that. Is there a specific thing that you're looking for?
So I currently look at customer sentiment data, and I look at commentary and phrasal analysis, but then I also add in figures, and I collate it all into one report, so it'd be interesting to see if you had a feature that could do that for me.
What was the first?
So phrasal and commentary analysis. So I know you can download actual comments, and then you can download the phrasal report, and then I manually put that into a slide deck. But I was wondering if there's a way that could automate that.
Yes. Yeah, so we do full phrasal analysis. We are releasing our new phrases soon-ish. Can't give you a date, but it's very soon. And we already do phrasal. And so yeah, we do exactly that. We look at what's being said. We apply like context as well, so it's not just kind of like dumb phrases of just like these two words. So we look at all of that, and we also aggregate that into like a higher level, thinking about like topics, like what is being said as like an overall subject, and then what are the specific verbatims that your customers are using to explain those points. And then a layer on top of that is our sentiment analysis. So yeah, definitely.
Brilliant, thank you.
There's one.
Yes, this chap here.
Thank you very much, both. Paolo Francesco, again. So a couple of questions, if I may. The first one, you showed a few examples where you're not only calling out what's happening, but the drivers, right? The reasons behind it. Which I'm just wondering, I should know the answer to this, but help me out. Is it possible to annotate on the platform the findings so that other people can benefit from the insight without having to run the analysis over and over again?
Yes.
That's question number one.
Okay.
Second question, if geeky question, if I may. Again, I should know the answer. But, could you talk us through how you calculate your negativity index? Because just looking at the different screens, they varied widely. Like where you're showing, like for some of the things were 2, 3, and then others were like 17. It's like, but without understanding what's behind the metric, it's hard to read much into it. So if you could talk us through that, that'd be really helpful.
Yeah, so I'll try to take the first one. Annotation. So what we were looking at today, for people who haven't seen the platform, look through various dashboards. So they were all different dashboards that we've obviously pre-canned for today to make things easy for me, frankly. Those are dashboards, and they can absolutely include annotation. So if you need to get some information to the boss, to the product team, to another department, use a dashboard. You can schedule those to go out. If you need to get it at 9 o'clock every Friday morning to that person, you can absolutely schedule that. And importantly, you can annotate it. You can say, the reason for this spike might be this. Christmas happened, and therefore the product's XYZ. You can start to label things so that it makes things easier and more spoon-fed for maybe people who are less analytically minded, but who want to benefit from those insights. So hopefully that answers the first part.
You can also add emojis. Very important.
And negativity index is essentially the proportion of negative comments per 100. So hopefully that sort of gives you a bit to go back on. Does that explain what you said?
Okay. Sorry. So we got a question from the online.
Sorry, we've.
Oh.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Hi, I'm Justine from FAIR. I'm part of our VOC program. I focus a lot on shipping, so this was really interesting for me. And I wanted to ask if there's a way to integrate more quantitative data. So, for example, I carried out a similar exercise and I was trying to see if our brands preferred using UPS or DHL. But I then have to compare, for example, an increase in negativity with adoption rate for each courier. And I feel like when looking at these dashboards, having a notion of how many brands are using UPS per day would be helpful. And it's the same, for example, if we look at the holiday period and the increase that we saw earlier. I feel like having the order volume during the holiday period would help put that feedback data into perspective, because if it's increased by 10 times, then what we saw was actually really good. And so I wondered if there's a way to do that without having to exit Chattermill and looking at other reports.
I'd start by saying there's probably two major ways of doing it. One does require moving out of Chattermill, so I'll give you that one first because it sort of doesn't answer your question, which might be bringing the data out of Chattermill and combining it with others in a BI platform. We've got an analysis API which allows you to do that, so you can start to combine things into a BI and analysing it with other stuff that Chattermill don't process, for example, transactional data. So that's one way of doing it. Now, that doesn't answer your question because that does require you to leave Chattermill. What I'd suggest, though, is using the metadata that you can have alongside the comments. So if you've got metadata of what courier that was used, was it DHL, was it UPS, or was it, whatever the thing may be, was the customer male or female, to use another simple example, right? If you've got that information, feed that into Chattermill alongside it, then you can start to correlate UPS goes up and delivery quality goes down, or whatever it may be.
From like kind of like a technical bit as well. So like if you did want to enrich the data, like the responses that you're sending, you don't necessarily have to have everything in like one thing that you're sending. So if you did have any additional data that you wanted to enrich the original responses with, then we can also kind of bring that in. So we can sort of do it for now, but yeah, this is something that we are thinking about.
Amazing. Thank you.
Have we got enough time for one more? Okay, no. Thank you both.
Sorry, online people.
Huge thanks, Teri and Tom.